Hi guys, today we're doing the deck openings for all 5 starter decks for Vanguard OverDress series. Now I know I'm a bit late, but let's get to this. So we're going to start with the deck for Dragon Empire. The name of the deck is Holy Dragon, played by Yu Yu Kondo in the anime, and by my personal opinion, this is probably the worst one of all 5 starter decks. So we got the playmat that has all the new zones on it, which means we also have the zone for the right deck and the zone for the orders. But seeing how the fields from Vanguard G, Vanguard V, and Vanguard D kinda overlap, I have absolutely no idea what the field is officially supposed to look like in Premium. So for starters, we get one Nirvana foiled and then 3 non-foiled Nirvanas. Also, we got 4 copies of both other starter deck units, Blaze Maiden Ryu and Rhino. And we got our starter Sunrise Egg. Then we have 3 copies of our secondary grade Inferno Sword. Then we have 4 copies of Verena, 3 copies of Iron Ball Dragon, another 4 copies of our PG Hayashi Kaze, and then we have 4 copies of Trickstar, 1 copy of our Overtrigger, and then we have 4 copies of our Critical Trigger Blaze Mater Zone, then we have 4 copies of Chokusha, 3 copies of Nico, and 4 copies of Rona, our Heal Trigger. And of course, then we have 3 copies of Sunburst Evolution. And now we have our second starter deck, Tyrant Tiger. In anime, this deck is played by Tanji Momoyama, and it's a starter deck for Dark States. Now, of course, once again, we get the cards, and I could probably cut off this part. We see the new field zones here. So in the top right corner, we have trigger zone. Right next to the deck we have the right deck, and we have the order zone where the marker zone used to be in the top left corner above the damage. So let's get back to the deck. First we get our Diablo's right chain, 1 foiled copy of Violent Bruce and 3 non-foiled copies. Then we have 4 copies of Anger, Richard, and Bad Steve, which are our other 2 units. And then we have Innocent Matt as our starter. We get 4 copies of our secondary grade 3 Fist Colossus, 3 copies of Iser, which is vanilla grade 2. Then we have 3 copies of Steam Gunner Brody, 4 copies of Acrobat Presenter, which is an amazing card. And then we have 4 copies of Miranda, which is our PG. And then we have our trigger lineup, 1 over trigger, 4 critical triggers, 4 draw triggers, 3 front triggers, and full hit triggers. And we finish with our Soul Charge order, Brother Soul, on 3 copies. And with that we can go on a third starter deck, which is Apex Ruler, played by Tahi Abata, in the anime of course. So this is supposedly the most powerful starter deck, and as far as the tournament results go, that's true, but that's for an upgraded deck. As far as the whole starter decks only thing goes, I would prefer to play Violence Bruce over this. So let's start the opening. First we have 4 copies of our Bastion, 1 foiled, 3 non-foil. Then we have 4 copies of Spear Rooks, 4 copies of Sword Fort, which is our grade 1, and 1 copy of our starter Bow Base. So this is our right deck. Then we have 4 copies of Witch Ramana, 4 copies of our tertiary grade 3 Rafluk, Then we have 3 copies of Lysana and 2 copies of Platinum Wolf, 4 copies of Life-Saving Angel Kurabiel, and then we have our trigger lineup, which is the ordinary 1 over trigger, 4 critical triggers, 4 draw triggers, 3 front triggers, and 4 heal triggers. And then we have our ordered Judgment Comet, which allows us to draw 2 cards, so that's not too bad. Then we have our 4th deck, Sylvan King, played by Megumi. Now let me just say that I love the starter decks, and as far as the starter decks go, this deck is probably the most fun to play out of all 5 starter decks. It's just that it can get stopped really easily by just one ordinary trigger. It doesn't even have to be the over trigger to stop the opponent's turn. I mean your turn in this case. Okay, so first we have 4 copies of Magnolia, one of them being foiled, 4 copies of Lattice, 4 copies of Cherries, and 1 copy of Loot, which is our starter. Now, deck is called a Sylvan King, and all of our starter deck units and of our trigger units, except for the over trigger, are Sylvan Horned Beasts. So I guess we could say that the deck lives up to its name. So after that we have 3 copies of Bruce Slash, 4 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast Dodger, 4 copies of Looting Beetle Stomalia, 4 copies of Cyrus, 4 copies of Aleandra, which is our PG. Then we have our usual triggers, Olbaria, our over trigger. Then we have 4 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast Jackalope, which is our critical trigger, 4 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast Polatter, which is our draw trigger, 3 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast Valine, which is our front trigger, and then we have 4 copies of our heal trigger, Sylvan Horned Beast Zlatorok. And then we have 2 additional copies of our order, Call of the Beast, which is essentially a 15k shield. And with that we are on our 5th deck, Aurora Valkyrie, played by Tomari Seto in the anime. And I don't know, I really like this deck because I think it has a lot of potential, because as the game progresses, the decks will become more dependent on their resources, and with that the prison can really take away some of their plays. But as it stands now, we don't have enough units that can lock from other places than the field, so you can get screwed up if your opponent simply doesn't play enough units to the field for you to lock. Okay, so let's start. First we have 4 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Seraph Snow, one of them being foiled. Then we have 4 copies of Recent Pink, 4 copies of Chiante Blue, and 1 copy of our starter unit Aurora Battle Princess Ruby Red. Okay, that's it for the right deck. Then we have our secondary grade 3 Alert Guard Gunner on 4 copies, 4 copies of Security Patroller, 3 copies of Javelian, 4 copies of Autonomic Caution. This is a great card because it has 10k attack and 10k shield if you have at least one of your opponent's cards in the prison. Then we have 4 copies of our Perfect Guard Craggy Beast Geargrand. And then we are on triggers. As always, 1 Cray Elemental over trigger, and then we have Aurora Battle Princess Lorus Yellow as a critical trigger on 4 copies, 4 copies of draw trigger Amy Orange, 3 copies of front trigger Front Rose, 4 copies of our heal trigger Aurora Battle Princess Truce Green, and 2 copies of Galaxy Central Prison Galactus. So this is all for this decks. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more videos like that, and I will see you all very soon. Bye.